This one quote is what's been missing from the immigration debate and the taxes debate. Rothbard writes, in the free market, the inexorable trend is to equalize wage rates for the same value productive work all over the earth. This trend is dependent on two modes of adjustment: businesses flocking from high wage to low wage areas, and workers flowing from low wage to high wage areas. This is the problem with protectionism. If workers are allowed to move, labor moves from low wage areas to high wage areas. But if workers aren't allowed to move, capital doesn't just sit there patriotically waiting to serve the native working class. If labor can't move to capital, capital will move to labor. Businesses move from high wage areas to low wage areas. Quote, the process of equalizing wage rates, though hobbled, will continue in the form of an export of capital investment to foreign, low wage countries. So conservatives are clearly making the same mistake socialists make when they attack capital accumulation. They tax capital, regulate capital, and demonize capital, and then are shocked when capital leaves. Rich people move, businesses relocate, investment dries up, and the workers they claim to defend are left with fewer tools, fewer jobs, and lower productivity. Rothbard isn't saying capital is allergic to higher wages. He's saying that because wage rates tend to equalize for the same value productive work, the problem comes from trying to maintain restrictionist wages through state intervention. He also explains how higher wage areas are supposed to become high wage in the first place. Quote, the high wage areas won their position through a greater investment of capital per head than the other areas. That's the key to wages. Capital per worker, not nationalist restriction, not socialist redistribution, not bureaucratic wage controls, capital accumulation. The West didn't become great because of the usual conservative cliches about national identity or loyalty to some vague idea of the West. Its greatness came from being comparatively friendly to investment. It isn't loyalty to a nativist identity or even some decorative list of values. It's loyalty to the principle of freedom and a conception of justice that is closer to natural rights than other places. In real life, labor and capital aren't at odds. They're cooperating factors of production. Workers are made more productive when they have more capital invested around them. That's why wealthy countries have higher wages. Not because politicians protected workers from competition, but because capital accumulation made workers more productive. The only way to increase productivity of the worker is to increase the amount of capital invested per head of the worker. And that's why the idea that capitalism requires cheap labor or is somehow against labor becoming more valuable makes no sense. Capital accumulation is precisely what makes labor more valuable. The worker with better tools and better machines can produce more, and because he can produce more, his labor commands higher wages. Conservatives will say it's ironic that the left claims to defend workers while siding with corporations on immigration. But notice the perspective they're taking. They're looking at immigration from the standpoint of the secure worker who wants protection from competition, not the marginal domestic worker who is trying to enter the labor market, and not the consumer who benefits from lower costs and a wider division of labor. Yes, preventing competition can maintain restrictionist wages, but the argument still gets framed backwards in this Marxist way. If your argument against immigration is that workers need to be protected from capital, you've already accepted the left's premise. You've just used it to defend border control instead of redistribution. They say corporations are hollowing out the spirit of the country in the name of profit. Of course, corporations can lobby the state for privileges and subsidies, and that should be opposed, but profit made on the market is not a conspiracy against the nation. It's the signal that resources are being used to satisfy consumers better than the alternatives. And workers don't get richer by restricting labor mobility or attacking capital. They get richer when labor and capital are free to combine in the most productive ways. The left wants to separate what makes the country successful from the success itself. They want the wealth, but they want to replace the market process that created it with redistribution. The right wants the order, stability, and prosperity of a free society, but thinks it can preserve those things while forcing the country into some imagined national image. Both are just different flavors of statism. It's hubris. They both want to claim credit for a market order while cutting themselves off from the principles that produced it. And both delude themselves into thinking they can design society.